And it says we're live. I hope it's not lying to me. Does that sometimes. I'm watching the stream. Here we go. Good. All right. I apologize, everybody. First of all, we are doing it this hour early from here on out. And second of all, I don't know what happened. But I scheduled it for the 22nd of July, not the 29th of July. So for those of you who were here a week ago expecting to see it, I do apologize. That was my fault. And despite all that, at least Troll managed to figure out my mistake. Bad, Carrie. Bad. Somebody get a newspaper, roll it up, and hit me with it. Okay. So I did not make a specific subject because I don't know what next week has. I wish I did. I really invest heavily in the stock market or in the lottery, but it is what it is. So for the time being, I'm just going to go with what I do know. And if anybody has a suggestion or comment of any particular value, please do toss it into the comments. In the meantime, oh, don't you hate it when that happens? All right. So, if I understand correctly, this week it came to my attention. Well, this week actually, there was a formal attempt at a lawsuit. I don't know if this is a junction or an actual tort. Doesn't, I guess, matter that much to most people. Somebody is trying once again to block California's magazine capacity limits law. Now that started, Jesus Christ, over a year ago? Almost 2 years ago that process started. This week, the state of California ordered Ninth Circuit Court to ignore the Supreme Court. No, that's not exactly true either, is it? As a court process moves along, both sides have the right to submit to the judge considerations, right? Let's say I'm suing Troll here because he called me a poopy face. Okay. So I'm suing him for $1 for calling me a poopy face. And in the process of that, I submit to the judge, hey, him calling me a poopy face was really, really mean. And does this look like a poopy face, by the way? So it's not true. The judge can take that written statement, and what it would probably be is some information that is either too complex to just depend upon the judge's memory in a hearing, or is citing previous events. It's called precedent, that the judge can then say, I agree with this, I don't agree with this, something else. I'm going to come to my own decision. Troll then has a right to file his own motion, saying, well, Your Honor, I called him a poopy face because he didn't shave that morning and he looked like he had shit all over his face. Where's the lie? State of California, taking that really childish analogy back into the real world, the plaintiffs in the magazine ban filed a motion with Ninth Circuit Court saying this is the actual words used by the United States Supreme Court, who will be ruling on your case later on. Okay. Who will be ruling on your case later on and ruling on your decision and where you went with it later on. So you might want to think about that. You don't want your decision to be reversed later. That could affect your job security. They don't say that out loud. They say, this is the precedent. And who set this precedent? And it's understood by the judges. Yeah, that's our job security at risk. But in any case, the plaintiffs filed this motion saying, this is what the Supreme Court has said. This is the precedent. The state of California turned around and filed a motion saying, you should ignore this precedent because, and this is our reasons, I don't care. It's crap. It's garbage. I haven't even seen it yet. Right? I heard about it like 2 sentences last night, half asleep, and I pretty much dismissed it out of hand. It's a ridiculous argument. I remember that much. What does this mean? Well, first of all, California's magazine ban. Here's the law, and then I'm going to get to the real. California's magazine ban is basically dead, right? It was ruled unconstitutional once. That led to, I think, the week of chaos and destruction in the street. No, led to a week of people ordering 15, 20, 100 plus. But anyway, 15 round mags. Luke, I see you. I recognize the avatar even from way over here. Plus mags over the course of the week that this law was basically dead. Well, then the state of California managed to revive it by putting a stay on the execution of the order, on the execution of the judgment, rather. So for one beautiful, wonderful week, and I remember I was in Colorado. I had just come in from checking the pumps when I heard about it. Oh, it was a golden moment. Californians were able to order magazines over 10 rounds, and they did by the millions. I'm sure by the billions, but most of them kind of off book. You know what I mean? The law now is back in effect, and it's going to stay in effect for about 6 more months. Here's how this applies to the rest of you as you're going to be moving through this process in most, many states. If California cannot hold on to their magazine ban, no state can. They will all die on the vine. And that's it. The moment Ninth Circuit Court finally says, you know what? No, Gavin, you're wrong. You've always been wrong about this. And it's time to put an end to this. No state will be able to hold it. That's the truth. Gavin is desperately hoping to hold on to this bad law. And it's a law he knows is bad, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute. So he's pulling out all the stops to try to block it from moving forward. The only thing, as far as I can tell, there hasn't been an attempt at a state constitutional amendment. And I find that very curious. It is what it is. Now here's the real. I refer to 10-round magazines, at least for long arms, as concealment mags, right? Because I'm starting early today, I did forget to bring it in. And this is a live stream, so I can't do it anyway, but I have a 10-round mag for my AR, right? And it is such a close alignment to magwell that it's basically a pistol mag. It would fit into an oversized pistol holster. And there is one brand of drill holster that once I managed to get the forward sight through the holster, I was able to set it in there, and it sat very, very nicely. It sat a lot more nicely once I took the stock off, which is illegal in that configuration, but or I think it's illegal, but it doesn't even matter. But it managed to sit in that holster, a drill holster. Now, if I were to take the front sight off, it would fit that much more snugly, that much more easily. Catch up with the chat real quick. All right. Troll says constitutional amendments are notoriously difficult to achieve. Instead, the change to interpreting the existing law to backdoor illegal measures. Troll is so true here. It would hurt you all to hear all of these constitutional amendments and what it took to get some of them passed. Essentially weaponizing the laws against citizens for revenue. Okay, so those of you that have been around for a while, you know that Dataslav, I don't care, is Volstead backwards. I actually learned how to say the word myself by sounding the word out, reading it backwards. Volstead Act, what was that? That was the enabling act for prohibition. What was prohibition? Prohibition was I think it's 18th Amendment, that outlawed alcohol in the United States. It took 20 years to pass this law. Now, at one point, I know I saw the evidence that basically proved what I'm about to say happened. Now, I don't remember where I found it. I don't remember exactly the details, but basically the people that wanted prohibition to pass would move from state to state to state to pass the law, or to pass the amendment. All they had to get 13, 18, 20. I believe it was 20 states in the U.S. at the time. 2/3 of 18, 6, 12, let's say 13 states. And it took them 20 years to do that. That is how hard it is to pass an amendment. It took, 5 years, I think, from the passage of 18th to the passage of the 21st. The amendment that repealed the 18th. And it really only took, I think, 2 years from the first ballot measure in the first state to the last ballot measure in the last state, despite having picked up, I think it was 3 more states, for it to pass. And I don't even know of a state where it didn't pass. The 21st, that is. Basically, they did it in 1 year. Why is it so hard to get a constitutional amendment? Because you have to get 2/3 of the states to agree. That is a real pain in the ass. Now, Volstead, because there was no real way to enforce an amendment just as such, because there was no punitive measures, no standards of evidence, no standards of what is alcohol, just banned alcohol. Congress passed the Volstead Act, named for a member of, I think, the Senate at the time. that said, okay, well, alcohol is banned. So if we catch you with alcohol, this, first of all, what is alcohol? This is alcohol. What are we going to do with you? This is what we're going to do with you. And the standards of evidence thereof. That was the Volstead Act. Now, I'm not going to bore you to tears with the details, but back in 2015 or 16, when I really made the connection between Volstead Act and the 94 assault weapons ban, I realized what I was doing was Volstead Act backwards, hence the name. All right. Now, to Troll's comment about what it takes and the difficulties of getting an amendment passed. I actually had an apostrophe in my head. Lightning struck my brain. It's about 3 years ago. I know getting this 48 divided by 3, I think it's 38 states, to all agree to pass mandatory carry as a constitutional amendment, which it is, it has always been, and was originally conceived of as, would be a very, very difficult, at least within a year or two. One of the problems with the 18th Amendment has always been it wasn't popular. It was never popular. It was only popular with about 5,000 people nationwide who moved from state to state to make it happen. Much more realistic goal would be to have 38 states pass a state version of Datislav as a state constitutional amendment. I can't speak to all of states. Hell, I can't even speak to my native California. I can't speak to my current state, Nevada. I probably should look into that. But anyway, I know both of the states have some version of a right to keep and bear arms clause in their constitution, whether it's an amendment or the original document. Excuse me. So the an amendment to those state constitutions that basically says, well, yeah, here in the state of Nevada or Colorado or Wyoming, where I was for about 6 months, you have a duty to keep and bear arms unless you have one of these exemptions. That's a lot easier. That idea kind of fell apart because of the complexities of writing it for one state, and then all of these clauses down at the end that would allow it to be. There was a clause on it that said, this act shall serve as the state of blank, or XX, I think it actually was, ratification of the federal constitutional amendments with the following changes. And that part, that following changes part, just got to be so much more complicated. I finally gave up. Any of you want to try? Go ahead. Oh, weaponizing the law against citizens for revenue. There were so many exemptions to the Volstead Act that it was essentially not even a law. It really was. You had a religious exemption, a medical exemption, a traditional purpose exemption, and at the end of all of this, if you still couldn't get an exemption that would have made you legal, you would only do 5 years the first time. That's it. It was your second time when you were really And on top of all of this, if you went through the process and did it legally and started brewing alcohol legally, all you had to do was pay a ridiculous amount of money per gallon. Weaponizing the law for revenue. That was one of the things, as I'm writing Volstead, Dadislav, I understood. I did not want to do that. That is why every time you do see money attached, with the exception of the elective exemption, it's based on the actual cost to government, based on, I think it says last 5 years. Most people don't realize this. Anybody, right, unless you're a convicted felon or domestic abuser, or I think 4 other categories that I can't even remember off the top of my head, you can get an automatic weapon. Oh yeah, it's $200 per gun, and you have to wait 2 years from the day you fill out the paperwork to the day you actually take possession or legal possession. And get rid of all this. This is ridiculous. This is a nightmare of bureaucracy and paperwork. And the worst part is, sooner or later, that $200 isn't even going to cover the cost. Now, this has been repeated by several people, and I have to accept that it's true because I really don't have anything to prove otherwise. That $200 was set based on the price of the Thompson submachine gun, which at the time was the most expensive, either the most expensive firearm on the market or the most common used by gangsters. This part is actually really bitterly argued by a lot of people. Was it because this is the gun gangsters all want, or is it because this was the most expensive? I honestly don't know. I do know, however, that multiple sources are sticking to the story. That $200 was set on that Thompson submachine gun price. Okay. Does not reflect inflation. It does not reflect anything except that knee-jerk reaction to the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which is the only reason the National Firearms Act exists. By itself, that is the only reason. Nobody cared until St. Valentine's Day Massacre. The gangsters shot each other up. Who cares? They're gangsters. They kill each other all the time. They did it before Prohibition. They're going to do it after Prohibition, which will never happen anyways, because everybody knows this is good law. Yeah, look how long that lasted and how much damage it really did. But anyway, nothing good came out of the 18th Amendment in Volstead. And the monstrosity that is the mafia, that is the mob, that is the Gambinos, and the etc., is all directly caused by the passage of the 18th Amendment by about 5,000 people. As I'm writing this, I realize, you know what? There's a simpler solution. You just go to the ATF and say, my name is mandatory carry, and I would like, I don't remember, but they used to call it the Class 3 permit. Okay, fill this out. One sheet of paper, my name, my home address, the location where the guns will be stored if other than my home address, my social security number, a couple other basic pieces of information that they need to know who the hell I am, fingerprints, and within 30 days, I have my Class 2 permit. I can go into any gun store and say, hello, my name is mandatory carry. Here's my Class 3 permit. I would like an M16. Yep, that's the guy. Give me a live scan thumbprint. Yep, that's the guy. Okay, here you go. Well, I got to fill out the registration first. Oh, yes, I understand. I'm okay with this. And off you go. And you have a ridiculously small, relatively ridiculously small fee. It's also a ridiculously small fee that reflects the economy as it actually exists at the time. That $200, 100 and excuse me, 88 years ago. Somebody check my math. Um, is not $200 today. $200 88 years ago was more than a year's pay for an average worker. A factory worker could look forward to maybe as high as $125 a year. A member of the military could look forward to maybe as high as $130 a year, and much more likely to be around $90 a year. No, it had to be more than that. Okay, so my math is a little bit off. I apologize. It's all quite irrelevant. The only people who they could afford that $200 per gun, by the way, tax stamp, would be the sort of people who had millions of dollars to spend. My last paycheck was $415.32 take home. And that's despite the fact that I took 3 days off during the first week, and I had to take 2 days off the next week. The 2 days off was not by my choice. My employer had to close up the shop for a couple days related to what happened last summer all over here. Actually, the police told them to close up because somebody vandalized the building and then broke in, and it may have been related to what happened last summer. I'm just saying. In 100 years, that $200, that's less than a day's pay. Right? If you say you can't afford $200 at that point, you're probably lying to me, or you're unemployable. Okay. Troll said, a buddy came by. He exhibited the full TDS. I am so sorry. He railed against Orange Man Bad for 2 hours without any external input. Ended it with him saying, read newspapers. They get in trouble for printing something wrong. No, they don't. Your friend's an idiot. I asked by who. He mumbled something and decided he needed to leave. Big shock. Issued pistols at 8 sync SSN and serial number. I support a required ID, but that pistol is acceptable ID and must be presented in good working order. No, Troll, I do not think simply having another gun of that sort would quite meet the standards. By the way, Troll is not the first person to have said that. But I also believe the rights should be practiced by schools and fully exposed to all students. I'm going to get to that in a minute. Hold my feet to the fire. No, having a firearm that is what we currently call Class 3 would not meet the standard of identification. Oh, see, I've got this Mac 10 and it's automatic, so you know, clearly I have one. No. Show me your ID, bud, and the live scan. And oh yeah, put that thing away. There are ladies present. They might get jealous. Okay. All right. Where am I? Good. Only half hour. Troll mentions uh, exposed to by students. I actually I was a freshman in high school at the year that they suddened my school district. Not the law, my school district. And I think actually it was just my school, not the whole district. Suddenly decided that, you can't bring your guns on campus. Before that, it was a common thing, right? Um, Hell, sheriff's office would make a drive through the parking lot once a day to see, okay, this truck has a shotgun. This truck has a AR-15. This truck has that's a lever action. Ooh, that's a nice lever action too. And they're recording the license plates. All right. So if an AR-15 turns up in a situation that they might be interested in, they might have a license plate, go back and say, hey, where's your gun? Oh, it's right here. Okay, this isn't the one we're looking for. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Um, Actually, I know it must have been just my high school, not the whole school district, because the other high school that was part of my district had a range. I'm not even joking. It's still there. Actually, it's still there. Um, it's just sort of permanently closed because federal law says no. And to the best of my knowledge, the last time it was used was while I was in Sacramento. That would have been after Shasta College, but before vacation. Just saying. Um, and for decades, gun safety firearms classes were part of school curriculum. In fact, with the knowledge and consent of the school, I was allowed to bring a firearm onto campus. Flag on the play. Okay. First of all, I was in a class where firearms were going to be used. Second of all, I went to the vice principal of discipline like a week beforehand, I think it was, and told him this is the situation. Here's what I'd like to do about it. And it would be in a locked box. It would be sitting in his office, actually in the school safe, not even in his office, but in the school safe, until it was time for me to come pick it up, get on the bus, go to that class, and then it would be turned over to the instructor for the class, who would hold on to it for the rest of that um, segment of the class. And then he would return it to me, and I was going to go straight home. There was a couple other rules that we agreed to, and I can't even look y'all in the eye. Did I suggest it? Did he say it? I don't remember. Well, I remember one of them was he had the combinations of the lock to make sure it was actually in there. I assume he opened it and checked. I have no idea for sure. And I want to say that there was a lock on the gun itself. I can't remember for sure and certain. So a second lock on the gun. They were okay with this because I was going out of my way to work with them to make sure that everything was fine. I would actually bring mandatory gun safety classes back to school. It's not as simple as it sounds. You're trying to tell somebody who's spent the last 9 years being told guns are bad, guns are dangerous, don't play with guns. All of a sudden, you have to play with a gun. That's kind of difficult. That's not good. Right? Well, it's not. Easy is what it's not. Okay, no problem. Um, Personally, I would actually start at the Head Start level. Just build them up little by little, understanding that this is what a gun really is, this is what it really does, this is the way to handle it. One of my first breaks with NRA was over their idea of gun safety in school. Eddie Eagle, more importantly, an expose, I think was 20 minutes or 60 minutes. Was it 60 minutes or 2020? I don't remember now. Either way, they actually put a real gun that was somehow set so it wasn't going to work. Probably just didn't put ammo in it. Into a classroom setting with a hidden camera. And the kids would play with the gun. They had just done the if you find a gun, don't touch it, get a teacher segment of the class. And here it is already, not working. And if I understood the story right, it was the same day. Eddie Eagle just doesn't work. Noble intentions does not counter real world effect. If it did, I'd still be a gun control supporter now. Anyway, so as you go up through the levels of school, all the way from Head Start to actual about a week or so before graduation, you'd slowly progress. Now, at about freshman high school is when you'd start handling actual working firearms. That's the year you would get the basic safety and how to disassemble and clean and maintain. Your senior year is the year when you would actually go to a range and either you'd qualify for a concealed carry permit or you'd qualify for an exemption. And it's that simple. Either way, not even if you have an exemption, let's just assume for the sake of argument that mandatory carry is exempt. And he's every single exemption you can think of except elective, because you can't have every single exemption except elective and elective all at the same time. It doesn't work that way. But anyway, I have every single exemption. And one day I go out, I'm taking my trash out to the trash can and there's a gun. The fuck do I do now? Because I've never seen a gun in my life. I don't know how guns work. I don't know what's what with this thing. I could fucking freaking accidentally kill myself by just taking it out of the trash can. You think I'm joking? Keep laughing. All right. Back in 2003 and 4, when I was having some real problems, I would have been a mandatory exemption back then. They were all up here. I went out, I got help. Excuse me. But during the course of getting help, now I know what the law back then was, and I know what the practical is, and will always be. As I'm going, going through the paperwork process to get the help I needed, girl behind the counter says, "Do you have a gun at home?" I say, "Why, yes, I do." "Oh, well, you're going to have to surrender it as part of the treatment process." Now, do not bother telling me that she lied. I know. But no problem. I had a firearm that may have been a 38 Saturday Night Special revolver once upon a time. The damn cylinder, you could see the corrosion in it, right? I bought it off of some homeless guy down on Richards Boulevard year and a half before for like $20. I don't even think it was that much. Um, Matter of fact, that was me and Brent's first professional outing together. He wanted to prove to me how easy it really was. To get a gun. And he wanted to prove to me not only that it was easy to get this gun off this homeless person, but to rehab it to a good condition. So we did that. Then he gave it to me. It was my money. I was basically betting the $20 that no, you can't do this. Well, he was nice and gave me the gun, and I put it back the way it was because I didn't really want to use this thing. And then this thing with the county mental health came up. I know you're lying to me, but I'm going to play your little game and get through this, get myself better, and then deal with my life. Sorry, I got to back the chat up just a bit, guys. All right, so put that same gun into my hypothetical trash can. Now this really piece of shit. And this thing wasn't really a firearm. It was a hand grenade on a hairpin, on a squeeze trigger, or a squeeze activation, okay? This thing was dangerous, more dangerous to me than it was to anybody else on Earth. And I find that in my trash can. What do I do now? How do I unload it? How do I make it safe to handle? How do I know how to handle it so as not to destroy potential evidentiary value? Now, I could go with just don't touch it and call the cops. And that would work a little bit, but what about my trash? It goes out today to be picked up in an hour. Am I going to have to sit on this smelly, moldy, rotten cheese that I threw out 3 days ago for another week? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to toss trash in there and take my chances. Or do I know how to unload the gun safely? I'm just saying. All right. Sorry, I was just showing off. I'm sorry, Troll. I'm not quite sure. Troll says, I was on this shooting team. We were deputized after the completion of gun safety and handling courses. On Fridays, we brought our competition guns for inspection in the office. That is a thing. It happened to my uncle back in the early or mid 80s. He worked security for a HOA, and they were limited duty deputies. They answered to the sheriff, and this was actually my first experience with militia. Yes, my uncle was in not only a militia, but a legally authorized militia. They answer to an actual elected official. Oh, most people don't realize that. The current sheriff and I were on the team together when the program ended. Wow. Okay. So you do go back with him a bit. Um, I was maybe 12 at the time. I think it was gun-free school zones that sealed the schools involvement in the Second Amendment. Um, to some degree, yeah. Um, I remember I was in high school when gun-free zones happened, so I had to go through a few extra hoops to get my gun to class to use it for the class. I photograph everything and call it my sheriff. They have I have a bit of corroded metal that purports to be a 22 Remington pistol of some sort. We found it cleaning a burned out town lot. Ooh, oh, ladies and gentlemen, this tells me A, that gun was in a building that burned down. I'm just going to assume a house. B, that it went through the fire. And C, that after the fire, it sat there. Okay, so a burning building down of any sort. The remains of the building is going to be there for at least 2 weeks before the last of it is cleared out. That's assuming that the fire was that building, was contained to that building. The fire department got onto it as quickly as they could, and even then, the building has collapsed. It's going to take 2 weeks, bare minimum, to clean that shit out. It sat in that for 2 weeks. I'm sure that it was more than just corroded. That's one of those ones you get the rubber gloves not because of fingerprints, but because you don't really want to touch this. It's mildly acidic, is what it is, or worse. Um, okay, all right. So my proposal would actually include bringing real gun safety training back in schools. And part of that Eddie Eagle failure thing is kids are curious, right? And they don't know any better. And criminals are criminals. They don't care if they dump a gun in the schoolyard, as long as cops didn't find it on me, so I didn't have it. Well, your fingerprints were found on it later. You planted those there. Okay, right? Get good, noob. But that's what they'll tell the jury, and juries sometimes hear that crap out. Where was I going with this? Oh, kids are curious. They're going to pick the gun up. They're going to play with it, right? They want to know what this is. Part of giving them that safety training so that they do know what a gun is and they do know some parts of how it works, up to and including using Nerf guns or water guns or something. I know that's not a clearly specifically figured out thing, but um, so that they can shoot at each other, with Nerf or water or something, and they'll be a lot more familiar. And when they do find it, they will be more likely to not touch it because this isn't some new exotic thing to them. It's an old, understood thing. They know it's real, and they know not to touch it now. Um, And then you might be able to do that whole Eddie Eagle, don't touch it, go get a teacher thing. Until then, noble intentions do not outweigh real world facts. I'm going to say it a million times. Hopefully, I'm not going to say it again this particular stream. All right. Okay. Now, I was. Okay. Troll says the cops documented it at all. Good for you. Means you can't be in trouble. Damn. Was actually something else. Let me see if I can re-find it. You know what? Sometimes you gotta say fuck it and lean into it. Also, sometimes you can say fuck it with condom on, which is what I'm about to do. So, there was an event back in January. You know what I'm talking about. And certain people want to get to the bottom of said events. No, they don't want to get to the bottom of it. They don't want to find the facts. They don't want to get to the evidence. They want somebody to hang. They want somebody to blame. That's it. And they want specific people to blame for everything. One of the names I'm familiar with, Brandon Straka. Now, if that name doesn't ring a bell to you, he was the original walkaway. Yeah, the whole walkaway movement was something that he basically built from himself. Right now, as we speak, he is still sitting in Washington, D.C. city jail. No bail. The charges are misdemeanors at worst. Infractions, most of them, they're just infractions. They are within the city of Washington, D.C. You may not spit on a sidewalk. And if you do, you are a very bad person. We will fine you. Spitting on a sidewalk is actually illegal in many cities. Not because it shows disrespect or whatever, but because back in the day when sidewalks were still boardwalks, right, wooden planks that people could walk on, spitting on the sidewalk would cause your spit to sit there for days, weeks, months. And besides the fact that it, made the boardwalk look gross, is it could, they believed at the time, it could spread disease. Tuberculosis primarily. So they made it illegal to spit on the sidewalk. You can spit to the gutter, not to the sidewalk. So if you ever hear somebody say, if you so much as spit on a sidewalk, now you know literally what they mean. Your parole officer, probation officer, that cop that doesn't like you, will stop you and will arrest you, will detain you for spitting on that sidewalk because that's a health and safety violation. He can cite you for that. And since he's already got something against you anyway, he's going to take you in for the something else that he's got on you. That's a real thing. That has happened before. To the best of my knowledge, it hasn't actually happened as a spit on sidewalk citation in over 100 years, but it could still be done. Um, so Brandon is sitting in that jail on a misdemeanor charge. The people that are so upset about the events back in January, they don't want to find the facts of what happened, right? Yes, one or two actual problem children will be sacrificed to protect the corporate body, the corporation. But by and large, they're going to go and frame the people who were there legitimately. Yesterday was the first day of real in-depth discussions on the subject. And amongst the people who were talking about what happened, real in-depth interviews. Amongst the people who were talking was a certain gentleman who said that during the uh, fiery but mostly peaceful protest, he was called certain words by people who matched certain descriptions of him. I didn't. I really didn't believe his story the moment he said he was called a racial epithet, but I couldn't quite put my finger on why I didn't believe his story. It could be that somebody in that crowd called him a very, very bad word that I will not repeat. Not in this context, anyways. I'll call myself a lot of things, but I won't repeat that word. Not now, anyway. I just couldn't quite put my finger on why I didn't believe him. That could have happened, but then I reread his claim. The woman who called him that, well, the individual who called him that, I can't say it was a woman, was wearing a pink MAGA shirt. I spent 2 hours looking for a pink MAGA shirt. Hypothetically speaking, if she had a red MAGA shirt and wore it hard enough, she could have dyed it out to be pink. It would have taken a year or more. There's only one problem with that story. If she wore out a red shirt to pink, the word MAGA wouldn't have been legible. I don't believe your story, sir. It's that simple. Right? Produce the video. And the problem with that is that the people who wanted this deep, in-depth interview so badly have also destroyed the video records. There's like 3 that show what really happened there that have managed to leak out despite their attempts otherwise. 2 of them in particular is that mostly one leftist who is going to have to be sacrificed on the altar because there's no way they can say, no, you weren't there, no, that didn't happen. He brags about it on Facebook, of all things. He bragged about breaking into the Capitol. He clearly showed himself at the shooting scene, and he clearly showed himself knowing what was about to happen and saying nothing. Why? Why did you say nothing? Well, we all know the reason. You wanted it to happen. And you wanted your viewers to know it was about to happen. You were sitting there with that heart on, just waiting for him to pull the trigger, you little bastard. We know. Right? It's pretty obvious from your own damn video. And then it happened, and you're like, oh, oh, shit. And you couldn't call it back now. Okay, catching up with chat. Troll says the cops documented. I say go hard, YOLO, maximum effort. I've been thinking, I believe America was undone by corporations with entity status operating as constitutional protections with constitutional protections as private corporations operated by the finger puppets. Okay. I'm not going to get too much into it right just yet. But there is a real possibility that Troll is onto something here. And I just learned about it about 26-ish hours ago. Certain ideas hit a point where the idea died. And right about the same time, another idea took off like a rocket. Are the two connected? I don't know. Basically, it's the same idea with a different different people running it. Is there something to this? I don't know. And I'm trying to find out. I'll tell you what, if I find that yes, there is actually a connection between the program that ended and the program that took off, I can already prove who caused the new idea to take off. I can't prove that they made the old idea die, but I can prove that they made the new idea take off. And please, by all means, when we get to that point, call me a liar. I'm not the one that announced it to the world. Business Insider did. So, guys, pay a little bit more attention to Great Sky Troll anti-drama. He might be onto something. All right. Everything about these deep, in-depth interviews is a show trial that even Stalin would have been embarrassed by. Hitler, not so much, but Stalin would have been embarrassed for the world to see this pantomime. To give you kind of an idea of just how much of a pantomime we're really talking about, the Operation Valkyrie, yes, I believe, Operation Valkyrie plot, and the investigations that came as a result of that plot or the trials that came as a result of that plot, were infinitely more honest. And Hitler literally had Rommel executed as a result of that plot for nothing more than knowing a couple of the people who may have been involved. Not were involved, not provably involved, may have been involved. And basically it was, we will stop torturing you once you agree to stand in front of the judge and plead guilty and then accept the judgment. And it was that simple. Flag on a play. For those of you that are familiar with my belief in the actual history of Iran from the fall of Germany to present, that same sort of mentality is the reason why when WikiLeaks came out with the Manning documents, the Iranian government just rounded up 250-ish, I don't remember exactly how many people, didn't even bother to interview them, didn't bother to take their statements, just put them in the courtyard and machine gunned them. This secret, this Iranian state secret, is now known to be out. The U.S. government knows it because WikiLeaks told the entire world, yes, the U.S. government knows this diplomat drinks when he's in Prague or wherever the hell. This is an example that I'm actually just making up because I've never read those documents. But the Iranian government knows that the U.S. knows that this diplomat drinks when he's in Prague. Okay, well, we know everybody who knows that secret. Round all 5 of them up, put them in the courtyard. And it was really just that simple. That was a little bit more of a show trial than the Operation Valkyrie trials, which is actually not that much more of a show trial than what's happening in DC right now. Those of you that participate in this trial, you will spend the rest of your life explaining yourself. And yeah, you're going to be in a lot of trouble for a long time to come. I do not advocate violence. And if you do it because I said to, I'm going to appear at your trial for the prosecution, right? Even if they don't want me there, I'm going to appear at the trial for the prosecution. Do not use violence for political purposes. I'll get to that in a second. But those that are involved in this nearly a Valkyrie-esque pantomime of justice, you are going to spend the rest of your lives making excuses for your actions. And some of you are pretty young. You want to spend the next probably 80 years saying, I did it because I believed in. No, we don't believe you. We know you're lying. All right. I'm going to make this next part quick because it is a aside. I do not believe in political assassinations because they only make the problem worse. The problem, whatever it was that you were trying to get rid of, all you did was prove just how terrified you are of the thing and make the target of your assassination that much more powerful. And on that note, when they tried to assassinate Hitler, each and every time, all it did was make him that much more powerful because the public could see he survived this. God believes in him. And that's the truth. I am actually old enough to remember the Reagan assassination attempt. The first one. I remember, and I'm kind of a little bit back then, but I remember people not always loving what Ronnie Reagan was doing. Then the assassination attempt came along. And it was a serious attempt. He was like within 2 hours, even after surgery started, they had to patch him up, right? Of dying in office. One good and lucky call by a Secret Service agent is the reason he survived. That's it. If he hadn't made that call that moment to go to the hospital rather than the White House, it would have ended differently. Even if they'd gone a block further towards the White House, it would have been so hard to turn and get back to the hospital that Reagan may not have made it, or he would not have made it. That's how close it was. It gets worse. See, people who before that, and I remember my grandfather was one of them, people before that who hated Reagan so much suddenly got real quiet about how much they hate him. That's the truth. The worst way, absolutely worst way to affect political change is at the barrel of a gun. It happens every single time, and it's happening down in Haiti now. Please, for God's sakes, don't use political assassination. It always blows up in your face, each and every time. Even if you are like that Serbian who assassinated Archduke Ferdinand, even if you are at that point where you actually want to die for what you believe in, it just blows up in your face. Look at what happened to Serbia for the next 1918 through 1989. Close enough. Let's say 70 years. Look what happened to Serbia for the next half century. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. It blew up in his face, didn't it? And he was ready to die for his cause. Hi, Alpine. You missed me raving like a lunatic. Well, now that's curious. The way I get the chat into the stream is I open up the chat, pop out chat, and then share screen. It showed up in the pop out, then on the stream as it appears to me, and it just now caught up because I can see Troll says something, and when I said caught, it appeared in the stream, and up is when Troll's response appears in my chat backstage. It's a very curious delay. Okay, moving on. All right, I'm at 1 hour and 8-ish minutes. Okay. I might go a little bit over because this is the first week with the new schedule, starting an hour earlier, ending an hour earlier. Moving on. Why? I predicted it back in March, April, May, I think it was, that there would be nationwide wildfires. Why didn't it happen? And why does it seem like all of my predictions don't come true? Well, it's kind of the reason why I have a certain code on Facebook. When I know I'm about to go back into fascist book prison, I make an announcement, and typically doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen for the reason I expected. Because I said it. People see it coming now. And I'm just going to say this the way I think it is. It's not some psychic power. It's some sort of logarithm. Somehow I have touched that logarithm in a way that it didn't like. And by saying X is going to Y, the sort of things that the logarithms would have allowed 30 minutes ago, it now puts a shut to. It's not because I'm some sort of mathematical genius. No. And it's not because someone somewhere in wherever the hell Facebook's headquarters is sitting at a computer watching me. They're not. They don't give a shit about me personally. It's because I put that +2 into the exponent that causes the logarithm to say, oh, we need a totally different outcome. Do not in any way, shape, or form attempt to tell me that YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook are not collaborating, right? It's a trust. I'm just saying it out loud. It's a trust. And I actually think I might know part of the reason why now, but I'm waiting for certain evidence to come out. Or not. But anyway, when I say that I expected massive wildfires across the Midwest, I put that +2 into the logarithm that caused YouTube to tell Facebook, hey, don't talk about fires from last summer. Don't talk about that. People have noticed. So they kind of put a kibosh on it. It also might be that it did happen. And a couple days ago, I had to suffer through some of it. There are huge wildfires occurring less than an hour's drive away from here. Oh my God, they were so bad that they made air quality miserable last week. I remember I was taking decongestants and I was popping pills for sinus headaches basically all day, every day. I was at legal limit of how many pseudoephedrine I could buy in 1 week. I was taking something like 6 a day, and it was barely getting. I was barely getting relief. I may have caused myself some stomach trouble with all of the decongestants I took, and I was still miserable. That was one fire that it. Now this particular fire also crossed the border, and I'm not sure which direction it went. To be perfectly blunt with you, but the smoke from that fire was really pounding me. Really, it was a fire, and it was making people miserable. Is it possible that they did something like what I predicted, but it just didn't get the kind of traction that they expected or hoped? I talk a lot about 917. Why didn't it happen? Well, you say it didn't happen, but then you say Inland Regional Center. Pick a story. You say it didn't happen, but then you say Pulse did happen. Pick a story. And yes, I do believe that some people are, well, I know some people at some level are watching me. It's not even a secret, all right? For those of you that go through my channel, basically page by page, you will eventually find that I have a video on the Tiananmen Square massacre, what really happened down there from the point of view of a BBC correspondent. not China's version, a BBC correspondence version of what happened down there, or happened that those 2 days. Someone responded to that video in Chinese. I don't speak Chinese. I don't write Chinese. I actually had to put it through Google Translate to find out what it said. Oh, okay. That's cool. It would be quick and easy for me to say that somebody from China did this. But actually, that video by itself was my first red flag that something's going on. The only people in China who are actually allowed to watch YouTube without restriction are government officials. See this face? This little sneer I've got? You outed yourselves, guys. I know no Chinese government official would have responded to that video in Chinese. He would have responded in perfect English and tried to pass himself off as either a Brit or an Australian. Pro tip: when you're trying to get a third party blamed for your actions, try using what they would have done. You people really think I'm this stupid? All right, moving on. Catching up on chat. Oh, hey, Troll's family's on leave. Troll says, you don't catch flack unless you're over the target. I'm circling my target. And those 8.8s are really good, by the way. That gun crew is good. It would help if they actually used 8.8s rather than try to make their 8.5s look like 8.8s. Gulch, I don't remember now, but it was something like "Long Live China." And you wrote it in Chinese. What the hell's wrong with you? Can I prove that my watchers are Iranian? No. But I am satisfied in my own mind that no, it wasn't actually China. It was probably Iran. And I've been on the fuck Iran train for it's 2021, and I know I formally got on the train in 2005, so 16 years now. I informally, well, I was waiting for the train to arrive 15 years before that. Again, pro tip: if you're trying to impersonate somebody, look like them and not like you trying to impersonate them. You know I don't speak Chinese, guys. What the hell's wrong with you? All right. Coming up on 45 minutes left. So, I'd like to speak of good news. This makes me giddy. This makes me feel warm inside. All right. It's not a secret, but it's not a bragging point. I found out 15, 16. Yes. Late 2015 or early 2016. That I'm actually a Canadian citizen. I did not know that. My maternal grandmother was a Canadian citizen. I knew this. I've known this, I think, since I was old enough to walk. Um, Vaguely, at least. What I did not know is that she never renounced her Canadian citizenship. She never uh, sought American citizenship. She died a Canadian citizen, and that's it. American taxpayer, Canadian citizen. Oh, well, okay then. We found this out because the Canadian government taxed her estate. Um, Year before last, I believe it was, I started following some guy on YouTube. He's an attorney. Well, okay, and he's just talking about the law itself and trying to help people understand how judges sometimes come to certain decisions or what a certain law says, and not the conclusions. He was really staying away from his own opinion on these matters as much as he could without, well, turning into a spurger like me. Um, he really was trying to stay away from that. And I watched 2 or 3 or 5. And, this guy seems okay, so I started following him. Um, Early into the lockdowns, into the pandemic, you start seeing a real change in his disposition. Um, and I mean, this was a sea change of his disposition. You clearly see he's starting to question the narrative, whether you agree with him or not. He's clearly questioning the narrative. Well, last week rather, um, David Freeheit, aka Viva Free, announced that he is running for parliament. This makes me so warm inside. I'd love to see him running, and I'd love even more to see him win. He will be representing Montreal, not Toronto, Ontario, which is where my grandmother came from. That's a shame. But go Viva. We the world really needs somebody to put the dictator of Canada back in check, and we need more of you. Um, I know this doesn't sound like a rousing endorsement, but considering who it's coming from, that's like horns and shit. So much so that I'm actually talking to a Canadian election law expert about whether or not I can donate to his campaign fund because I want to send him 100 US dollars, which would be roughly 120 Canadian dollars, just as a show of support. Um, the problem with that is I may be a Canadian citizen, but I'm also a US citizen, and I live in the United States. Will this affect his campaign in the negative? My expert has not quite gotten back to me yet, and I'm waiting to find out. Those of you in the chat, Luke, Troll, Alpine, as far as I know, all of you are U.S. residents and U.S. citizens with no allegiance to Canada. So please don't. But please just don't. Me with my Canadian citizenship, I'm kind of, is this actually okay, or am I going to cause him problems? Not am I going to go to jail. I care less. I'm not going to go to jail. I'm going to pay a big fat fine. Um, Is he going to have problems? If he is, I'm not going to do it. Um, David, I love you and I wish the best for you. And I hope you win. I really do. And no, I'm not going to donate to your campaign if it's going to cause you to have to explain why you're getting American money. Um, and something I should have touched on at the start. Um, Minneapolis has had one of the most disgusting crimes in um, decades. And I'm comparing it to last summer's riots with some pretty harsh language. I'm very hesitant to even describe exactly how the crime was carried out, but there was a murder that was so disgusting that I don't want to ever see the evidence. Um, and I know I don't want to see the evidence because I saw the evidence of the exact same crime when it happened in Paris in 2019. I believe it was late 2019. Um, the photo ended up in front of me. I didn't ask for it. I didn't look for it. It was there. All right. So somebody got a screenshot off of Twitter and then put it up on Discord. And oh, right. I do not want to see the Twitter uh, uh, posting of the crime in question. I don't want to see the videos because I'm sure there's like 5 of them out there now. Um, it's going to get worse. And this was not in Minneapolis proper. This was actually out in one of the suburbs. If you live within basically a 2-hour drive of Minneapolis, start carrying, drive with your windows rolled up and your doors locked. Keep your home doors locked, even during the day. It's gotten to be that ridiculous. They say that this is a one-off. I don't believe it. Nobody goes out into the suburbs to kill one person as a one-off. We're looking at 4 or 5 people who must have sat down and egged each other on, and one of them finally did it. Right? So, show the greatest possible caution. Um, if you can get out of that city, and I mean like 2 or 3 counties over, do it. It kind of is as simple as that. And scorch earth your way out. So from bad news, or from good news to bad. Um, Alpine says, super handy to have dual citizenship, especially Canada. There is an old joke about Canada. If you hate Canadians, that's okay. You're wrong. If Canadians hate you, that's okay. You're wrong. And it's pretty much the truth. Everybody loves Canadians. Canadians love everybody. And if this is not the case for you, that's okay. You're wrong. There is something wrong with you for not loving Canadians. I'm the exception because I'm only half Canadian. Joel is asking for people to sub his cousin Jake Johnson band. He needs 3 more subs to do shorts. I think. So, it is Jay and Killjoy's channel. I don't know who Jay and Killjoy is. Jake Johnson Band, because I have absolute supreme godlike powers here. Ah, shit on a stick. At least I would if I... Oh, well, yeah, hey, I can do that too. Ha ha ha. It's going to sit there for a minute. Ah. All right. Jake Johnson Band. Wish you'd said something before Stream Troll. I could have done this. I've been standing by. Jake Johnson Band. Copy link. Stream. No, it's Jake Johnson Band. He does Bible read. Yes, that's what I looked for. Oh, supreme godlike powers are mine. I wish you'd said it. I would have done this at the start of the stream and pinned it. Okay, there's the link, guys. He just messaged me. Right. And if I remember to do it later, I will. Remember to do it later, he'll be like within one of Absolutely Alpine. I'll actually sub him under my personal name. So that'll be 2 of the 3. Luke, I'm aware. I am aware of the events to which you refer. Unless this is, well, unless it's something other than what I'm referring to. I guess that was pretty obvious, huh, guys? All right, we got about 30 minutes to go. Let me put this bluntly. Minneapolis has been called Little Mogadishu for the last 3, 4 years, something like that. And there's a reason for that. A very direct one reason. And yeah. Get the hell out of Dodge if you can. What's going on there is an example of why we need to pass mandatory carry. This is actually a simple concept for once. Criminals will be criminals, right? That's not going to change. Criminals will get guns. That is not going to change. There is a certain individual out there who 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, invited me for a friendly chat on his channel, and it turned out to be ambush journalism. And he began to rail on, the loads and loads of shooting. Well, it's not loads and loads of shooting, but moving on. It happened in the U.S. while at the same time ignoring that one of his own crowd was a man who went to prison and they're both Brits. Man who went to prison for manufacturing, I think it was MAC 10s, illegally. This part was mind-blowing to me because I'd used this man as an example of criminals being criminals. He was manufacturing MAC 10s by the hundreds um, within a half a mile of Buckingham Palace. He made the huge, stupid, arrogant mistake of buying the airsofts on his credit card and saying that they were uh, for a movie. No, you don't buy 100 airsofts for a movie, right? You buy 10 and then you move them around the actors. I think it was 20 all told. Oh, uh, Sterlings. No, Stens. Excuse me. 20 Stens were used in the entire production of Star Wars 4 through 6. Only 20 for over 3 movies, plus a couple of side projects that I don't entirely understand. Half of the guns that you see actually on the film, they're rubber. They are literally rubber mold uh, copies that were meant to stay in the stormtroopers' holster the entire time, or they'd be running around in a scene where there was supposed to be any shooting, right? From 4, A New Hope, that scene where a couple squads of stormtroopers are coming off of the elevator to go surround the Millennium Falcon. Yeah, none of those were real. Those were all rubber models that were made because that scene they needed something like 12 guns, right? That was this jerk off in Britain's big mistake. And getting back to the point, criminals will be criminals. They will get guns. Banning guns does absolutely nothing at all to stop them. Even back when I was a gun control supporter, I understood criminals would still get guns, but we'll make it more difficult. Well, no, obviously we won't, because the one part has to be perfect each and every time to be done at home. Yes, more than a drill press is really, really helpful. But no, you don't technically need more than a drill press. Luke, I look forward to talking to you later. Hopefully within a couple hours, okay, bud? Um, I do have an appointment I have to attend today. I have to go to work, but I look forward. Actually, Luke, can we talk this weekend? Say Saturday evening. Um, moving on. Um, there is nothing you can do to stop a criminal from getting a gun. It's not going to happen. This fact had to be proven to me to finally make me understand gun control doesn't work. I admit that. I'm it is what it is. I know it. It is what it is. Um, at least if every criminal in the world has it in the front of his mind, not they may have a gun, which will always sit in the back of their mind, but in the front of their mind, he probably does because he's legally required to carry it unless he's got one of those fancy exemptions. They're always going to think twice about acting. That's the truth. This guy from Britain who was making Mac 10s, literally 2 blocks from Buckingham Palace. The fact that there are snipers on the roof of Buckingham Palace that would have made him rethink his actions, that's the first thing that stopped him from actually trying something. The fact that there are other buildings that are owned by the palace, between the palace and houses and businesses, that kind of stopped him too. And last but not least, the fact that he was doing it for profit and not for political purposes, that was the final nail in the coffin. Nothing stopped one of the people that bought a gun from him, because there's at least 100, at least 25 still running around out there. That assumes that the British police recovered half of the ones that got out. They only think they recovered half the ones he bought, assuming that they recovered half the ones that he got out. That's about 75. There's still 25 running around out there. And those are the kind of nice ones that have factory-made furniture. Basically, that's all he was buying was the furniture. Okay. Troll says a very determined man could do it with a decent file set. I'm not sure if troll means file as in metal file or file as in computer file for CNC. And well, no, not just file troll. You would actually need a drill press, bare minimum, a drill press. One of the examples I'm sort of fond of citing is the guy that made a Mac 10 from, quote, total trash. His use of a mattress spring has always kind of struck me as, what? Although, if the spring can take the pressure of being slammed back repeatedly, maybe he could. He also used a ram set as a barrel. You can buy a ram set in a hardware store for, I know I priced it out recently, and I know it was in double digits, but it couldn't have been over $75. I mean, a $75 gun. Oh, that would be worth it. He described it as, quote, total trash. And he described it, if I understood his description, these were parts from garage doors that he had to remove to install new garage doors. Well, those tracks that he used, you can get those from Home Depot or Lowe's or Ace, $10. Then all you have to do is put it in a bandsaw that is ready to handle metal with a fence in place at the appropriate point and run that thing through, and you got it. I'm going to go one little step further. Mac 10s traditionally have a charging handle on the top. The only reason you can't move the charging handle to the side is nobody's ever bothered to try. That's it. That's literally the only reason. You move it to the side. Now you've got a Mac 10 that could theoretically be mounted under a long arm, and you've got 2 guns downrange. There's actually a technical term for this. It's called a light. You put a submachine gun or a pistol or something onto a long arm, onto a rifle or a shotgun or submachine gun. You put a lighter weapon onto a heavier weapon, it's called a light. The two guns that are of roughly equal or exactly equal, putting an M16 onto an M16, very, very difficult, and it's been done twice that I know of. It's called a medium. When you put a heavier weapon onto the lighter weapon, like a shotgun onto an AR-15, it's called a heavy. And I'm honestly, I'm sometimes flabbergasted with the kind of money they have and the kind of resources, technical resources they have, that drug kings don't get into the gun business. It's safer, it's easier, it's more profitable. It really is that simple. Okay, so Troll really wants people to check his cousin's channel out. Really, really wants people to check his channel out. Yeah. The truth of how profitable and easy the clandestine gun market is, it's actually reached a crisis point in Australia. Australia, the country that banned their guns back in 1999? Was it 96? I think it was 99. History. Port Arthur massacre. A guy with an AR-15 and a shotgun was an AK, civilian AK. You know what? I can't remember. Went through the beach, I believe, of the resort town, Port Arthur, and killed, I think it was 20 people. As a knee-jerk reaction to this mass shooting, Australia banned pump action and semi-automatic long arms. That ban, semi-automatics, period. That ban has remained in place ever since. Now, supporters of the Australian solution say, look, Australia hasn't had a mass shooting since. Well, first of all, yes, they have. Second of all, these mass shootings don't look like mass shootings. They look like drug shootings because supposedly it's only drug dealers shooting each other up. They've been manufacturing their own guns, and in particular, apparently in Australia, they like the Tech 9 platform. Oh. Okay, so all of your big fancy words about how effective this has been, what did they do? It's a little bit more complicated. See, before the ban, drug-related shootings were usually very small things. It's one or two people killed. It was clearly over the drugs, not whole families massacred. That only started after the ban. Propagandists for the Australian solution will also tell you, oh, and look at what happened with the suicide rates. Well, flag on the play there, too. The gun suicide rate dropped, and really dramatically in the first year. We're talking like 75%, I think it was, drop off. The overall suicide rate dropped, I think it was 50%, just from that 75. Within 1 year, you start to see the drug overdose rate climb, and rather precipitously. It's not that the suicide rate actually dropped in any meaningful way. It dropped for 1 year. That is true. And it dropped 25%, really. It's that drug overdoses picked up the slack. It's as simple as this. Medical examiners in a drug overdose case, unless there is literally a suicide note, will not call it a suicide. And even then, they will not call it a suicide themselves. They're going to pin that problem off on the uh, cops that have to investigate the crime, the suicide. Once the cops that get they're investigating the suicide or the death, once they get that ME's report back, self-inflicted, they're done. They're not going to go anywhere with this. What? It's a drug overdose, so it's obviously a suicide. So we're done. Our hands are clean, or it's an accident. They won't mark it as a suicide either. They will mark it as accidental. They don't want to deal with the family. The ME doesn't want to deal with the family. Nobody wants to deal with the family in a suicide case. And if there's any way to write it some other way, they will, each and every time. That is the truth. So true is this statement. Growing up, there was a neighbor of mine. I think his name was Frankie. I know his name was Frankie, and I can't remember too much more about him. Roughly 82, 83, he was found non-responsive. He's in high school at this point in his life. Maybe he graduated from high school, dropped out of high school. I can't remember. He had a drug history. This is true. At one point, one day, his mom came home, and she found him non-responsive. The fire department came out. Paramedics came out. He was dead on scene. He was transported to the county coroner's, where his apparent drug overdose was investigated. The county coroner determined that this was such a large overdose that it could only have been a suicide. That's it. We're talking, this is a normal user amount. This is a suicide amount. Frankie was way the hell up here, right? He tried to slam a whole year's worth of, I think it was heroin, all at once. That is what the ME based his decision on. Or maybe it was deputies that made the final call. Either way, his mother spent the next 10 years railing at anybody who even dared to say that her baby boy killed himself. He was murdered by the dealers. They gave him a hot load or some shit like that. This was deliberate. This was intentional. He did it to himself. It's worse. After 10 years of harassing and bullying and threatening, the coroner's office and the sheriff's office, they finally gave in and changed the official declaration of Frankie's death as accidental. That is how powerful that suicide declaration is. And that's why they don't do it. And that's why most of you don't realize half of all drug overdoses are suicides, and half of all suicides are drug overdoses. And that's why Australia's actual suicide rate for 1997 didn't really change. It was a mere 5% change, not the 75% change or 50% change that it looks like on paper. Australia didn't work either. Catching up on chat. Yeah, I'm going to have to back it up first. Alpine Gulch says, Australians regret it badly. In my life, I have only heard of 2 Australians who support the ban, and both of them point to the suicide rate drop that actually isn't. One of them was actually in the live stream way the hell back when this first started. I think it was the first live stream, maybe the second, and has not come back. Troll says, I know a dozen Aussies, and they're all invited to my range whenever they come through. Yeah, I got 4 in mind myself. Well, 5, actually, that's not fair. I always forget her husband. Rob Bob is probably my favorite upside down person. I've never heard of him. Neither has Alpine. Rob Bob Aquaponics. He was a huge help when building my system. Okay. He would not only answer questions, he devoted several videos to specific questions I was asking. The whole world is upside down to somebody, Alpine, but it is an absolute joke with Australians. They will say it. We are upside down world. And Troll says, he said most viewers are never going to build a system and they usually ask questions that really can't be answered. Okay. I'm not even going to lie to you. I am never going to build an aquaponics system. I have, however, downloaded an entire series on building your own well that does not include any heavy equipment. Okay, it does include one piece of heavy equipment, a sub pump to force water, actually, ironically enough, down into the well as you're cutting, so that I can install a well that doesn't exist on paper. It is entirely possible that I have already installed one of those wells here. It is also entirely possible that I might have installed a new cinder block wall right about the well casing, right about the spot where that well casing comes through the deck, under a pretext of reinforcing a as a new load-bearing member to reinforce the apartment conversion area. I don't know, that could have happened. Might have hit it some other way too. So it's good that you found somebody that can help you with that aquaponics project. All right, we are now at 2 hours. I'm going to go a few minutes over because I do know that this is the new schedule. Most people have just tuned in an hour ago. High points for today. First of all, get a gun and know how to use it. Gun control doesn't work. It doesn't even actually affect suicide rates. Criminals not only can, but will get guns, and it's always going to strike me as absolutely flabbergasting that they don't start clandestine gun factories. Those are cheaper to build over most other drug enterprises. Let's take meth. Meth, you're talking about a lot of chemicals where things go real wrong real fast. You have to buy the equipment to do it. Um, you have to buy materials to do it. And you have to do all of this without raising suspicion versus gun factory talking about a maybe 20-inch metal lathe. Okay, that's a little expensive. A 16-inch metal lathe, I can go get one right now at Harbor Freight. I think it's $250. That's easy. A drill press, I can get one at Harbor Freight that is at least long enough to do the job. Actually, I have one. It was more than $250, but less than $300. With a lot of work, I can turn that, let's say, $300 um, drill press into the lathe needed to turn down a barrel. That's it. And a $200 pneumatic ram system. Or I could go buy a junker car and use the rack and pinion to do it. That's that last part. The pneumatic system is only really necessary if I want to rifle the barrel. That's it. That's the truth. Hate me forever. I don't care. I really don't. Matter of fact, one of these days, I'm actually going to get around to making just a simple Allen Hart style barrel. Hopefully a little bit better. Not in 45 ACP. I think I'm going to go with 40 cal because that's what I have, just to prove it can be done. Um, okay. Criminals will always get guns. If they cannot get them on the black market, they will manufacture their own. From Star Trek 5, um, the one about finding God. Uh, John St. Talbot, or was it Talbot St. John, played by Christopher Warner. The line is, people we tricked into coming here, they were the dregs of the galaxy. We forbade them weapon, they simply fashioned their own. Okay, so Christopher Warner is an actor. He can carry that line a lot better than me. But he's right. The very previous scene, I believe it was, there is this literal dirt farmer. He's not farming anything. It's just dirt. He's putting seeds in the ground as an exercise, as a form of movement. And up rides Cybok on his charging steed. Was that later? That might have been later. Either way, here comes Cybok. Says, "Oh, yeah, this dirt farmer's loading this gun. You can tell it's probably a bolt action slug thrower in a universe of phasers. Okay. And you can tell that it's completely homemade. Like, you can even see that the stock is basically a piece of wood. Yeah. Yeah, Talbot St. John is right. They simply fashioned their own. Okay. So, gun control does not work. It's if it could ever even conceptually be made to work, I would still be a supporter. That incident with my M9 was the end of it for me. This is before I found Alan's video, and before I saw Tim's video, and before I saw Farmcraft's video. This is before I found YouTube. I think YouTube doesn't even exist yet. And I learned. I learned real hard, real fast. I spent 2 months being butthurt. I spent 2 days being mad because Brent endangered my life with his homemade gun. Right? That's where my mind was. It took me actually a couple months to finally accept that no, he never endangered my life. He just made me really mad to find out that I was wrong and had always been wrong. I'm adult enough to be able to understand it and say it now. I get it. I was mad because Brent made me look like a fool. Because I was a fool. I don't have to like it. It is what it is. I do want to address, as a slight aside, Chicago's mayor has once again blamed gun smuggling for Chicago's gun violence. No, Mayor Lightfoot. It's not the smuggling that's doing it. You could actually get. I'll go back to my old gun controller supporter days and tell you exactly what has to happen to make gun control work, as I understood it back then. Right? First of all, it's a process. It's a step-by-step process that would take longer than I will live. First, you ban all of the automatics. Right? Well, that happened in 1965. That's done. It happened again in 89, sort of. Okay. Excuse me, 1965. Not 69. Then you ban all of the semi-autos. Well, that sort of happened with the 94 ban. Not really, but sort of. Then you ban all of the pump action and lever actions. This is just where I was sitting at the time, because those you can keep your hand on the trigger and still work the action. Okay. Then you got to ban all of the bolt action. Okay, so now we're down to revolvers only. Then you have to ban all the revolvers. See where this is going? You little bit at a time. Okay, so now we're down to muzzle loading black powder, right? Ban literally everything else. Well, now you're going to have to ban that because somebody's going to use that as some sort of end run around the law to go do a shooting. And a brace of 6, 12 dozen black powder pistols. That could be done. Just Google Blackbeard. And then you have to ban all of the material possession. You have to ban people from owning drill presses and lathes and pantographs and anything else that could be used to make a gun. That's the part I knew I would never live to see, at least for the purposes of making a gun. That's the part I knew I would never live to see. Well, that and maybe seeing a ban on black powder muzzle loading, muzzle loaders. That's just impractical. By the way, even as I'm supporting this early on in Clinton's first term, I'm watching a news article, I think it was CNN, maybe it was HLN, of Bill Clinton taking a tour of a water jet cutting, a factory that uses a water jet cutting table. I don't know what they made there, but it was so novel and it was so incredibly clever and blah, 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 blah. And this is all about his support for manufacturing sector. I remember watching that and thinking, that's the reason why they'll never be able to ban the guns anyway. That's the reason why it'll take so long to repeal the Second Amendment. And I'll never live to see it. That same equipment could and apparently has been used to make black market guns. I can't find it now. And Brent found it, could never find it again. Back around 82, 83-ish, the mafia had set up a gun factory in a New Jersey warehouse or factory where ostensibly they were producing automotive parts. They would have gotten away with it too, but for those meddling kids. I mean, but for taking people off. They were cutting hours back because they didn't want anybody on the factory floor who was not involved in the gun making process. Well, all these people being laid off, they put in for unemployment. And somebody had to explain why this factory is now idle, especially when the same people investigating these unemployment claims are seeing the factory's not idle. And the electricity bill apparently proved as much. Why is the electricity bill as high now as it was before if the factory is idle? That's what led to a deeper investigation that revealed that this place was manufacturing Uzis. Oh. They wanted anybody who was not involved in the gun manufacturing process off the factory floor so that they wouldn't see the Uzis being manufactured in the supposedly auto parts plant. Greed got in the way because they were taking people off of the auto part factory to spend more time making guns. See the problem there? They got caught. Well, if you're producing 4 or 5 Tech 9s a month, you're not going to get caught. It really is as simple as that. I'll tell you how true this is. I have made over a dozen Glock 22s in the last 2 years. There you go. Okay. Um, wow. Alpine and Troll are really chatting it up. Uh, but yeah. Oh, oops. Okay. Um, Luke, I understand. I'll try to reach out to you tonight. Okay. It'll be on my phone though. Um, filling a system. Troll. It was so many. You two are really chatty Cathy's today. Didn't see that. Um, okay. Troll and Alpine, you two uh, need to discuss details of your meeting off the chat because you guys know how I feel about self doxing. Well, you know how I feel about doxing, especially self doxing. Um, Alpine, thank you, but my ability to travel is somewhat limited right now. It's money. Um, Troll, get that off of there. Too late now. Still waiting. Anyway. Um, yeah, guys, in the future, if you want to exchange emails, you're in my chat for a reason. You must trust me enough. Send it to me, mandatorycarry at Gmail, and it's also in the about. Um, it's in the about. I don't even think you have to go through the whatchamacallit, that thing where you say no, I'm not a bot. Um, Send it to me, and then I will pass it on. Right, and please do not exchange emails or any other information that can be used to identify you in my chat, guys. Please. Um, I do not want to be. Um, it's as simple as this. I do not want to be blamed if something goes wrong. Um, so because apparently a photo of me was obtained by Unicorn Riots, and they tracked me down at home. Okay. Um, Guys, I'm gonna wrap it up here. Carry 365 and keep your head on a swivel because it's gonna get worse. Keep calm and mandatory carry on.